We're back and talking about the explosion of a prison population. And I just want to show you this number. This number is what it costs taxpayers to keep state prisoners. $31,286 per state prisoner annually. $31,000. Think about all the things the state could spend $31,000 a year on. What are all our alternatives here, Sophia?
We should be looking at alternatives to incarceration, diverting people out of the criminal justice system, providing them with the necessary education, counseling, substance treatment, mental health treatment, because there's a disproportionate number of people who are incarcerated who have mental health issues. If we use those alternatives, some of the approaches that we've been using in New York, for instance, we could find that we could decrease this population substantially. We could also release a number of our elderly incarcerated people. Yeah. We have approximately 246,000 people over the age of 55 who are incarcerated, and the population is growing. The prison population of this age group has increased by over 63% in the past 4 years.
Right, this is part of that tough on crime was to put people in prison for life. So now what you have is this population of people over 50, with very low recidivism rates, but where we're spending upwards of $32,000. You know, I'm talking about like the cost to taxpayer, but the other piece of it is there's all these other costs we don't necessarily talk about that are costs to the whole community. Right. What does it mean to live in a community where people are disproportionately incarcerated?
Sure. I mean, first I'll say it's not just the $31,000 cost, but the question is what sort of bang are we getting for our buck? Right. 60% of the people who go to prison and come home go back within 3 years. Any other industry with that failure rate would be out of existence. Instead, we keep feeding resources into the criminal justice system in the United States and doing things the same repeatedly. And with the 700,000 people coming home from prison, they're not going across America. They're going to very specific communities, communities that are disproportionately impacted, communities of color, poor communities. And so it's not just the fact that these people have done long periods of time in prison and they're not prepared upon return, but it's also all of the invisible punishment that we attach. The fact that you can't vote,
you can't live in public housing, you can't, and so if you can't live in public housing and you're going back to a poor community and your wife or your mother or your sister lives in public housing, you can't be together as a family, right, because you're no longer allowed to live in public housing.
So the communities that need the political power the most to be able to get the resources to respond to the large numbers of people coming home are the same communities that experience a huge amount of voter dilution as a result of so many people coming home without the ability to vote.
Yeah, There are two sort of sides to this as well around, like when I think about the costs that are borne, you made the point about the elderly, about people who have served so many years who are unlikely to recidivate compared to others. I also, there's this text called What Will Happen to Me about the children. There are nearly 3 million children who have parents in prison. And it's this, this kind of beautiful book with, these beautiful faces of young people talking about their sadness. This one young woman, Jasmine, talking about it. I felt so sad. I was crying. It made my head hurt, my brain hurt, my stomach hurt. This young woman has not committed a crime. Her mother is imprisoned for a drug crime, and she is managing all of the psychosocial, cultural aspects of that. It just feels like it's time for us to talk about a new solution.
I couldn't agree with you more. The devastating impact on the children of parents who are incarcerated, we see this manifesting itself in the schools, because if a child has just come back from a visit with a parent, that child is unlikely to be focused on what's going on in school because of all of the emotional issues that you just identified, and then that child's performance starts to decline, and then it becomes a self-perpetuating, devastating impact.
Is it possible to imagine our party saying build schools, not prisons?
Not right now. I think that what we're hearing from Sophia and Glenn is the cycle of delegitimization, and it starts at the level of the individual defendant, but it goes all the way up to the political system. If you talk about decriminalizing marijuana in Washington, D.C., you're laughed out of the room. Yeah. Either you're like a hippie, which is its own throwback. There aren't really many hippies around, so you're probably not a hippie. Right. Or you're some sort of politically naive person who wants to coddle criminals. Yeah. Those are not the only two choices. And just to pick a very specific example, last week President Obama went for the first time on Reddit, where you can get grassroots questions from around the country, and there were a bunch about drug policy. And the Washington media says, oh, there's that marijuana question again. Oh, those stoners. Well, no. The issues around marijuana or crack cocaine are not just about drug users. They're about the question of whether we think this is the right trade-off to delegitimize and dehumanize people and take them away and disappear them as individuals and disappear these issues from our political discourse. Is this the right trade-off? A lot of people think not.
And I've got more on this question of prisons in just a moment, but first it's time for a preview of Week with Alex Witt. Alex?
Hello, Melissa. Well, to you, everybody, hello out there. And on the campaign trail, jobs seem to be #1 issue out there, how both parties are reacting, plus new poll numbers that suggest President Obama may have gotten a convention bounce. New storm warnings out at this hour, and it's not just from Tropical Storm Leslie. In fact, we're going to bring you the very latest in a busy weather day, including right here in Manhattan. Plus, we're nearing the 9/11 anniversary. One analyst says there are terrorists in the U.S. now who would like to avenge the death of Osama bin Laden with an attack. It is the topic of today's Office Politics. And a new study just out that tells us which states are the most expensive when it comes to raising children. The top few provide some surprises for you, so we're going to share that with our viewers. Melissa, back to you.
Thank you, Alex.
Okay.
And up next, the surprising solution found in prison food. Right now on Rikers Island, 24 inmates are waiting for a program that could change their lives. In just a few weeks, they will join Fresh in hopes of getting just that. They aspire to follow the example of the 18 students, inmates actually, who earlier this summer completed the 10-week, 40-hour-a-week culinary training program in Rikers Island Jail here in New York. Now, the opportunity is made possible by Elizabeth Gaines, our foot soldier of the week. Liz operates under a very simple premise about the inmates her program works with.
They can take responsibility for what's happened, make amends for the harm that they've caused, and then come back and be part of a community.
As a law student in the 1970s, the shock of the Attica prison riots, where 29 inmates were killed, set Liz on a career path dedicated to the lives and betterment of inmates. But she also has a personal connection. For 25 years, Liz drove 6 hours each way between New York City and Virginia, bringing her 2 children to see their incarcerated father. Liz learned firsthand a prison sentence applies to more than just the prisoner. And when Liz joined the Osborne Association, the nonprofit that runs the Fresh Start program, as its executive director, the organization had 2 employees. They served 50 prison inmates a year. 28 years later, Osborne has 200 employees and works with 7,000 prisoners and family members a year. Fresh Start draws participants in with culinary training, but also offers computer literacy classes, job readiness, and life skills. Inmates take part in their communities, cooking and serving holiday meals, and once an inmate has completed the program and left Rikers Island, Fresh Start offers job and school placement assistance. Wondering if it works? Since its inception, 1,500 men have completed Fresh Start. The New York Times reports that of the inmates who take part in the Fresh Start program, 90% do not return to jail within the year. Cost to the city, $5,000 per participant. Many people come together to make Fresh Start possible, but Liz Gaines is the program's lifeblood and driving force. And as she told us, to be effective in this work, you have to spend time in jail to listen to what people need. It's not a job you can do behind a desk. For getting out from behind that desk and for making a difference to those that so many would just as soon forget, Liz Gaines is our foot soldier of the week. And that is our show for today. Thank you to Sophia, Glenn, and Ari for sticking around. Thanks to you at home for watching. I'll see you tomorrow morning, 10 a.m. Eastern. Coming up right now, Weekends with Alex Witt.